Everybody Hates Rand is a Wheel of Time podcast that will contain spoilers for all 14 books. So if you're anti-spoiler, stop this, read all 14 books, and come back. We'll be here, waiting.
Our title is a joke and is meant to be taken as such. Everybody in this context refers to us and our cats. You are free to feel however you want about Rand. He's a fictional character. Please don't DM us.
The world is a mess, Dark One stretching out his hand. The dragon's reborn, the fire's been fanned, but everybody hates Rand. Everybody hates Rand. Everybody hates Rand.
Okay, let's do it.
Hey, no construction noise this week.
I know, I'm doing the transcript and it's quite bad.
I'm sorry, you guys.
Yeah, very sorry. Now they've covered up the construction with like one of those, football field sized drop sheets. And it's actually wigging me out more than the construction noise because every time I see it in my peripheral vision, it just looks like a column of smoke.
Sure, yeah. I've had the same.
So,
especially like early in the morning, I'm like, okay, the building next door is just on fire.
Yeah, you're like,
that's
oh,
fine.
Great, there's nothing, it's the void.
Yeah, the void is staring
rippling
back
in the
at
wind.
Me.
Yeah, so I think it's just weatherproofing, in case it rains.
Too. For the longest time the other day, I was looking at it and I was like, why would they do this now? Like,
they're hiding from us.
Yeah,
because we moved in.
Are they sick of us looking at them? Is it? I'm like, it can't be because of the dust. Because
they're like, this rear window wannabe bitch will not stop peering through the blinds at 8 a.m. Okay, we're gonna get through this, even though I'm half asleep.
I know, Emily had to work really hard today.
But we can do it.
Can we?
I don't know. This is Everybody Hates Rand, your friendly neighborhood Wheel of Time podcast. I'm Emily Jusha.
And I'm Sally Gidger.
And 4 chapters today, baby.
Yeah.
We're rushing through it, but, 4 chapters and not tons to talk about, I'd say. We start off with another Lan point of view. Already the pattern is becoming clear. And that Lan, having picked up a single follower, whose name is,
Bulin.
Oh, I was going to say Bueller.
Buford. Lan's little minion Buford. Yeah,
Lan has a minion, and he's forcing them to go on back roads so as to avoid acquiring more minions.
Yeah.
Because Lan is capital D, capital W, Death Wish personified.
Yeah.
He's just such a little freak. Or a big freak, I guess. Just tall man. But they, as they're riding along through a town or something, they pick up 3 more followers who refuse to be left behind.
Yeah.
And Lan is mad about it.
Yeah, and they have names and characteristics, and it's these are just cardboard cutouts.
Yeah, I don't know anything about them. They're
weird.
2 of them are Monkieri and one's not. And I'm like, okay.
It's cool.
Irrelevant. We then get an extremely, interesting... Sally's trying not to roll her eyes too hard, or the optic nerves will fry.
Burst, yeah.
We then get a combination of Perrin and Galad points of view. The rest of this chapter is intercut between the 2 of them. What Brandon Sanderson is going for here is, he's trying to render something that is frequently seen on television or in movies into literary form, wherein we're seeing a very similar scene happening in 2 different places with 2 different characters, and we're just cutting between them. This is the classic example is when you have a group of criminals who are being interviewed by the cops, and someone will answer a question that was addressed to a different person, and therefore we get things pieced together.
Yeah.
It's like that, a little less smooth. So that's what we're going for. This is meant to emphasize that Perrin and Galad are narrative foils in similar positions, in that they are leaders of groups of people that they have somewhat tentative control over. Galad is more or less leading a pack of feral dogs.
Yeah, to put it mildly.
And Perrin is leading as we know, a very disparate, fractured group of people that's mostly made up of refugees. So, not a lot of military grade people there. Yeah. They both are people who are relying on information from advisors and scouts. They both have friendships. I don't know. It gets looser the more I try and compare them because, of course, Galad and Perrin are very different characters.
Yeah, very different characters. Narrative foils for exactly the sort of reason as you say that they're, like, similar characters playing off of each other, but, like, they're also obviously diametrically opposed in these situations, so there's going to be combat between them.
Yeah. The other intended effect of this scene is to, like, bring it all to a point, which is the inevitable meeting between the two of them, which, because of the way that it's being framed, is almost certainly going to involve conflict of some kind, We're not having Buyer being like, yeah, Perrin's a great guy and you should totally trust him, or even a measured, yeah, I've run into this guy before and things have been a little weird around him, but I don't know.
Yeah, or even Galad doing any type of, like, research or critical thinking from the information he's getting from notorious creep and violent freak Dane Bornhold and Jared Buyer.
Yeah.
Like, these guys roll in and they're just, like, so militant and extremist about Perrin being a dark friend, and he's got these golden eyes, and Galad is just like, yep, that tracks.
They're like, Bornhold's like, he killed my dad.
Yeah.
Which is not true. Not even vaguely true.
Yeah.
And that's just, the White Cloaks have always been an exasperating group of people because we, the readers, know what's going on, and the White Cloaks are just these agents of meaningless conflict.
Yeah.
We were talking the other day about how, a good conflict, a good argument narratively, one that's satisfying, is one where you can see both points of view.
Yeah.
Both, characters, both groups' points of view. That almost never happens in the Wheel of Time. We're very much set up to stick with our main characters and then the guys who the main characters are against.
Yeah.
We're supposed to have, I believe, some sympathy for Galad because Galad has been a good guy character. He's had that sort of framing.
Yeah.
We're supposed to give him the benefit of the doubt. He's not like Bornhold Sr. kidnapping random people on... Oh, wait, he is,
Yeah.
It doesn't really hold water at this point.
Yeah.
Galad's no longer a good guy. We're just being told he's a good guy. Mm-hmm. So we talked about the intentions of this structure. The effect is kind of laughable.
Yeah.
I just feel wildly condescended to.
Yeah, absolutely.
It also just doesn't work like books aren't movies.
Books aren't movies.
And trying too hard to make them into movies feels a little ridiculous. Like, there are other ways to get your point across if what you're doing is trying to elevate tension, trying to elevate conflict. There are different ways to do that in literature that don't involve relying on techniques that come from visual media.
Yeah.
So, not, like, super impressed with this.
No, not at all. It's also just, like, really frustrating because what it is doing in the, like, literary format is just, like, interrupting both Perrin and Galad mid-conversation repeatedly. Mm-hmm. So every time you have to pick back up with one or the other of the characters, it takes you a minute to be like, are they responding to what Galad was talking about a second ago, or is Perrin responding to something that Gaul just said to him? Like, it's really disorienting and harder to follow than it would have been if it would just been like Galad point of view, break, Perrin point of view. They're heading in the same direction.
Yeah, we also, I would argue the Galad point of view is totally unnecessary.
Yeah, same. I was just about to say we don't need both of them.
Yeah, we already know that Buyer and Bornhold have Galad's ear. We can assume what they have told him without having to go through the frustration of actually listening to it and having Galad believe it, again, without any sort of critical thought. So yeah, it's Galad's point of view is frustrating. Perrin's is frustrating mostly because we know where it's going. Perrin and Gaul are talking, and it's a pretty, like, reasonable conversation. Gaul's like, yeah, we checked it out. It looks like Basil Gill and the others have been kidnapped. Blah, 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 blah. We could take them, but, you know, blah, 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 blah. And Perrin's like, oh, yeah, let's try and avoid conflict if we can. Da-da-da-da-da. You know, just a fairly normal conversation.
Excuse me, yeah.
Although Perrin keeps being like, oh, my past keeps catching up with me.
Yeah, the other thing Bornhald and Bayer and whoever keep telling Glad is that Perrin murdered those 2 White Cloaks back in book 1. Mm-hmm. And it's like, yes, he did, because they were attacking him.
I believe Perrin they'll make us do the blow-by-blow later, but it's a sort of, it's an interesting setup in that we are forcing a main character to own up to violence that they committed early in the series.
Yeah.
When, not just early in a series, but generally in fantasy series like this, good guy characters can pretty much kill indiscriminately without ever facing any consequences.
Yep.
So it's, on one hand, interesting to have to face any sort of consequences. But on the other hand, this is clearly just like a narrative set piece that is less about Perrin facing consequences than about just sort of like torturing him. I don't know.
Yeah, it feels like a big, like, structurally it feels like a big stalling point. Like, we were in book 13, like, let's go. Come on. We gotta get moving and grooving to the last battle, even though we still have like 1,000 pages of actual book count before we get there. Like, for fuck's sake, let's go.
Perrin is also a character who I don't need to interact with the consequences of violence as a narrative theme anymore.
No, I'm so over it.
Yeah, Perrin is constantly thinking about that. He might not have sat laying awake we might not have zoomed in on him being like, damn, those 2 White Cloaks who I killed because I was in a berserker mode for the first time.
Yeah.
Blah, 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 blah. But it's like Rand, they are both very aware that they are responsible for many people's deaths.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily something that we need to have them be like, let's go to trial about it.
Yeah. Like with so very many plots in the Wheel of Time, if this like whole trial setup where it's like we've got a hero, capital H, going towards a larger thing that they consider more important than their everyday actions, suddenly being interrupted by like the forces of justice to be like, you have to stand account for this horrible thing that you did. And then like the whole narrative is like a courtroom drama almost about like presenting this and what it means. I would be so on board with that. I would eat that shit up. I would love that. But that is a plot that it doesn't belong here. Like, it has no place. We've already covered the themes. Structurally, it plays no point. It's ridiculous.
We're being dropped in an episode of Law and Order.
Yeah.
And I do use Law and Order deliberately because it's propaganda and the White Cloaks are basically cops.
The White Cloaks are basically cops.
Like, the idea, we haven't even gotten to the trial yet, but the idea that the White Cloaks are like, we can exact justice on anyone.
Yeah.
Is a little bit ridiculous.
Yes, in my fantasy novel, there would be some, like, cool, sexy lawyer, like the lawyer in the Nexium trial who's bringing... That's a very...
Moira.
That's a very
We've
niche
been watching.
EHR HQ insider bit, but if you've watched The Vow or Seduced, you know who we're talking about. If there was some, like, interesting figure of justice trying to, like, do something, not just like the fucking cops. I would not be on board for them being like, oh, you have to deal with the cops. I'm never on board with anybody having to talk to the cops.
Yeah, and before you tell me that the White Cloaks are like, well, it was people in the White Cloaks who died, like...
If a member of my family got murdered, that does not mean I get to be the judge, jury, and executioner.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not how it works.
You're on trial now.
Yeah, I've set up a courtroom in the middle of this forest. Where's your lawyer? That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
And the jury is made up of me.
Yeah.
You silly, silly geese.
Yeah, and again, to your point with the White Cloaks acting like cops, we talked a lot last week about how they are in many weeks, about how they are existing as this extrajudicial form of justice. Like, they have no actual authority over Perrin.
Yeah. So anyway.
Stupid.
Yeah. In the middle of this set of 4 chapters, we'll get a mad point of view, but we'll come back to that so we can just finish up the parent Galad thing. After these intercut scenes, we next get Perrin walking around the camp with Grady and I think someone else, but I can't remember. Oh, Elias. They're just walking around doing their, like, Perrin's doing his little inspection, and they're just continuing to talk about the White Cloak threat on the horizon. Grady's like, yeah, I can travel more, and Neald is working with the Wise Ones. Grady notices some channeling and goes over, and we see Neald with one of the Wise Ones and one of the Aes Sedai, and they have successfully bonded and are, not bonded, like warders, linked. They've successfully linked, and now Neald can make big gateways again. So that's exciting. Neald also expresses a lot of, like, joy at the linking process, and he's like, it's so cool to wield Sidar and I feel complete, blah, 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 blah. And it's just like, oh, it's so nice to see characters who are, like, just have a very nice relationship
a joie
with them.
de vivre.
Who are just depressed Muppets walking around.
I intercut your point there, but one, it's nice to be like, Neil, just be like, this is really exciting, versus being like, it's really scary and, like, intimidating to deal with the other half of the power for, like, whatever dumb gender dynamics they have
I don't know if this
on.
is telling us that Neald is in touch with his feminine side.
Yeah.
Neald is very gay-coded.
Yeah, Neald is very...
So they're like, get it?
Get it?
Get it? Brandon Sanderson fans will be like, he's a gay character, Brandon Sanderson.
Brandon Sanderson's doing a really good job at representation. Neald has a curly mustache.
Yas.
Yas,
and he says, yas, queen.
I do sort of love the headcanon that Neald's walking around using, like, only incredibly queer lingo and slang in, like, every meeting.
And Grady's his translator.
Yeah.
It's like that sketch from forever ago, Obama's
Anger
translator. Grady's just like, this is Neald. He talks like a drag queen.
Oh, it's so good. We then have the incredibly tragic sidebar where Grady pulls Perrin aside and is like, can I have an afternoon off now that I can make gateways again?
Now that I can literally teleport, could I maybe go see my wife and child?
Yeah.
And Perrin's like, it's really not a good time. And I'm like...
Grady is like, literally, can I have a single afternoon to go and I will come back? And Perrin's just like, I don't know, Bessie, like, what if we need you? And he's like, that's why Neald is here. And Perrin's like,
Perrin should go on trial for labor violations.
Yeah, for being a fucking CEO.
For being a manager.
Yeah.
No, you can't take the time off.
No, you can't take the time off. You're needed here. This is your real family.
Grady,
your job.
Grady, ask forgiveness, not permission.
Yeah, just fuck off.
You should have fucked off, and Neald could be like, oh yeah, Grady's with his wife and child, because... Yeah. As a reminder, we are human beings with lives.
Yeah.
Not just your little teleport tools.
Little teleport boys. 2 things. One, Grady says that his son is really ugly.
Which is actually so iconic. Perrin's like, I'm sure you have a lovely son. And Grady's like, no, he looks like balls. But I love him. I love my tall wife and my ugly son.
I was like crying reading it. I was like, what were they thinking? And being like, Grady says that his son is really ugly.
They're just like trying to inject some personality into Grady, and I'm like, I have enough personality Grady has more personality than Perrin does.
It's such a weird little tidbit. I was like, okay, whatever. The other really tragic thing is Perrin's like, well, you've never asked for time off before, like a manager. And Grady's like, yeah, before I thought I was going to go crazy and kill everyone that I loved.
But now, believe it or not, Sidon's cleansed. Whee! And Perrin at least isn't like every other character in this series who's like, prove it, bitch. He's just like, all right, I believe you. You say so. You and Neald agree, I believe you.
Yeah.
Which is great. He's like, yeah, that sounds like a Rand sort of thing to do.
Fuck around with.
That's great, but I'm also like, yeah, that is a real tragedy in just a few scenes that Grady's like, yeah, I've just been distancing myself from my wife and son so that I don't murder them. But now I think I'm good.
Now I'm good. Now I want to go see my family.
Now I want to have a family life again. And I'm like, okay. Good, Grady.
Good, that's excellent, Grady.
Bring your
Work-life
boyfriend,
balance. Yeah.
Neald. He and Neald just act so much.
Yeah.
Like they are in a long-term
Committed relationship. Yeah. This is my husband, Grady, and his boyfriend, Neald, and our very ugly son.
And our ugly as fuck son.
It's like how every time Oliver comes on screen, the authors are like, this is the ugliest child
What
alive.
is it with the authors being like, oh, maybe because it's like, good old Kane? Are we supposed to be like,
Oh, no.
every little boy who's ugly is good old Kane? And I'm like, I don't care. Why in the world would that be relevant to me?
And like, I maybe get if the first time Matt saw Oliver, he's like, that's a weird looking kid. He's got to grow into those ears or whatever. But every
single time.
Like, that kid's face is fucking busted. I've never seen an uglier kid in my life.
I just want you all to consider how whack it would be if, like, Brigitte ran into an ugly child and was like, it's my husband. Like, we would be like, this isn't okay.
Remember how in Twilight the werewolves imprint on babies? That's what I would think about. That's what I would think about. You named my daughter after the Loch Ness Monster.
The Loch Ness Monster!
Okay, the energy of this episode is going off the rails.
I did. Well, you have emerged. As soon as we start talking about vampire babies, you're like,
In me!
yeah, you're a vampire baby. Hey, Renesmee. Nope, don't even.
Renesmee. God.
Pause. Okay, yeah. So,
Grady's time off is not approved.
Grady's time off is not approved because Perrin's a bitch.
Yeah.
Then Perrin goes and...
Hey, Tybalt, are you stuck?
No, I can't remember what Perrin goes and does next.
They get a rider comes in from the White Cloaks, basically.
Oh, yeah. Bornhold himself, I think.
Dane Bornhold.
Comes up and is like, murderer! You killed my papa! And Perrin's like,
Hey, Dane Bornhold.
I didn't. Hello. Hi, bestie!
No, I didn't. Slay.
They're like two people who were in a relationship and had a very different breakups.
Yeah. Perrin's like, your dad? I don't know your dad.
Perrin's like, okay, whatever. Hey, Dane, you whack alcoholic little gremlin. And Dane Bornhold's like, you monster. Anyway, he's like, come talk to the Lord Captain Commander. And Perrin's like, okay. They're like, you can bring some Aes Sedai. And he should have.
Yeah, and for some reason he doesn't. He just brings Grady in disguise.
Yeah, I think he's like, I'm keeping the Aes Sedai back because they don't know we have Aes Sedai. He brings Grady and one of the wise ones, who of course doesn't look like a channeler the way the Aes Sedai do. And I guess it works because then they're like, oh, he must not have Aes Sedai actually. But he goes and meets with Galad and is like, hey, give us our people back and we'll be on our way. And Galad's like, no.
Nor.
And Perrin's like, okay, then what was the point of this conversation? And Galad's like, I just wanted to see if you have yellow eyes for real. And Perrin's like, wasn't really hiding it.
Yeah, those are my eyeballs.
Those are the eyeballs.
They are the ones in my head.
He's like, great, this has been a super productive conversation.
Grady does threaten to kill Galad. He like
Grady's like, I could kill him. And Perrin's like, no. And I'm like, come on, let him.
Why are you such a snowflake, Perrin?
Yeah, why are you so annoying? You denied Grady's time off request. The least you could do is let him assassinate Galad.
Yeah, assassinate the cop
As a
leader.
treat.
Yeah. You should get to assassinate a White Cloak every time you deny him time off. Until he works through all 10 million of them or whatever.
Maybe he earns time off by assassinating White Cloaks. Instead of hours worked, it's White Cloaks assassinated.
Assassinated. It's not a bad business model.
Yeah. Anyway, then they're like, okay, bye. And that's it. And we're just like, okay, so that whole big intercut conversation hasn't even led to any sort of resolution in this.
Nor.
They've just met and been like, we don't like each other, bye.
It's also weird to me that Perrin and Galad haven't met at this point in the series. Like, I keep forgetting who has interacted with each other.
Yeah, Galad and Gawain have been in this, like, weird sort of bubble.
Yeah.
Like, they have managed to interact with everyone except Perrin, I guess, if you count all of our main characters. But, like, it's just weird, yeah.
Yeah. Just really, these are two enormous characters, and they just haven't crossed paths yet.
Yeah, like, Dane Bornhold's like, have you heard of Perrin Golden Eyes? And Galad's like, whomst?
Yeah. Nor.
And I'm like, what do you mean you haven't heard of him? He's one of the main characters in the book.
Yeah.
And you're a side character at best, Galad.
Yeah.
Get it through your head. Anyway, meanwhile, in Camelin, Matt is doing his Brandon Sanderson version of Matt stuff. He's, like, out drinking or something. Gathering info. He is in, quote, disguise, unquote, in that his clothes are slightly less fancy and he's grown some scruff. And he's like, everyone's after me, there's a fucking bounty on my head, as Varen showed him in the last chapter. Someone's looking for him. How spooky. I am with, he tells us that the Band of the Red Hand is camped outside of Camelin, like, a few miles away. Matt has sent a letter to Elaine being like, hey, we need to meet up because Matt is invested in getting Eludra's cannons funded, and Elaine seems like the right avenue for that, but she has not responded to him yet. So he's just sort of in this, like, stasis point. As he is wandering around, gambling, doing his stuff, he overhears that somebody got murdered by having their throat ripped out and all the blood drained. And Matt's like, dun, dun, dun. The Galam.
Yeah.
My old bestie, the Galam, is back. So he goes and finds Tom, where Tom is performing in a different tavern. Tom's like, yeah, I heard that too. I'm like, didn't go run find Matt right away.
Yeah, also,
like,
Tom, you don't have to show off.
He's like, yeah, I heard that already. God, yeah, old news. I know everything. Then they walk back to the camp. They get there and Matt is like walking to his tent when Teslin comes up. I guess the Aes Sedai were kind of like also in Camelin scouting or something. Teslin comes up and is like, hey, just wanted to let you know I'm planning on leaving soon, but I wanted to thank you for everything you know, she's very polite. She and Matt have a good relationship. They shake hands. Matt's like, you can have some horses, actually. I was a bitch to Jolene because she was a bitch first, but you're not a bitch, so you can have some horses.
Have some horses.
And she's like, okay, great. And then he walks into his tent and smells blood. Yeah. Do you guys smell blood?
Mm-hmm. If there's enough of it.
I guess I've never encountered, quote, enough of it, unquote. Well, anyway, Matt's...
It just smells like copper to me. Like, it smells like pennies.
Wow.
It also tastes like pennies to me. Can you taste blood? Like, when you have it in your mouth? Like, if your mouth bleeds, not if...
If I'm sucking it, you mean?
Yeah,
if I'm having my dark...
Your vampire activities.
Yeah, I guess it tastes vaguely of copper, but I haven't really thought of it before, and I don't smell it, but I would attribute that more to the fact that I don't have a very good sense of smell. Anyway, Matt smells blood and is, like, duck and cover before the Galam can get him. The Galam was lying in wait, but Matt makes an escape out of his tent. He grabs his spear and, like, wraps the foxhead medallion around it so he can get the Galam to run away. The Galam and he are neck and neck, and Teslin comes out and starts yeeting chairs at the Galam. Yeah, iconic. Which finally drives him away. Matt runs into the tent. Oh, the Galam kills a couple people on his way out. Matt goes into the tent and because he's worried about Oliver, because Oliver usually sleeps in his tent. Luckily, Oliver was not there. He was with Noel, you know, playing their little shoots and ladders game in a different tent. However, tragically, Lopin, one of Matt's serving men, I guess. They're like in their middle. They're like 70. Like middle age. But he got murdered, which is really sad. Which is really sad and needless, Brandon. Yeah. What did Lopin ever do? Nothing. He just was a little guy.
He's a little guy who's stitching up clothes and stitching up Matt.
Yeah.
And you're gonna get rid of him?
You're gonna get rid of him now at this juncture?
Foolish.
Yeah. Anyway, then they congregate afterward and come up with a game plan wherein Matt's gonna start sleeping in Camelin every night, like a different inn every night. So are Noel and Tom.
And Oliver, I think.
Oliver, I think, because they're like the main targets, they think. Oh, because like in the conversation Matt had with the Golem was like, I'm gonna go after everyone. That fucking old guy, that ugly ass little boy, and your wife.
Yeah.
And Matt was like, my wife.
No, my wife and my ugly son.
And Matt's like, oh my god, 2-1. And I'm like, bestie, she is so far on the other side of the continent. Like, don't stress.
Yeah.
Worry about Tom.
Worry about Tom and Noel and your ugly son.
Yeah, these are the valuable members of this group. But they're like, yeah, we'll do evasive maneuvers. And meanwhile, Matt's gonna write another letter to Elaine to try and get her to see him. They're only in Camelin. I mean, they're basically in Camelin because Varen told them to be, right? Because Matt is trying to get through the time limit on this letter. The deal was that he has to wait a certain amount of days before he can leave Camelin or open the letter whenever and do what it says. Mm-hmm. And he does not want to open the letter because he's worried it will ask him to do something bad or humiliating in some way. Fair enough. Aes Sedai aren't, like, nice to people, so I get it, I guess. But this is delaying their departure for the Tower of Genji. Though Matt notes that he would also want to, like, be here to get the production of the cannons started, so
yes.
Sort of killing two birds with one stone. I don't know. He's annoying.
Yeah, the only other thing I really want to say about it is that there's this new, incredibly annoying, like, Matt tick that Brandon has added in, where he's like, Matt is I say continuing, but it's way more egregious than Matt has ever been before, where he's, like, continuing, in quotes, to, like, notice how beautiful and sexy women are and how large their tits are and how much he would like kissing them. But he keeps undercutting it with, like, I'm a married man, I don't notice that stuff anymore, so, like, maybe I'll think about her for one of my friends, which is also just, like, gross. Mm-hmm. So it's really heinous. There was probably, like, 30 instances of it in these 2 chapters. Like, it's a lot.
Yeah, it's egregious. It's, again, meant to be comedic because we're meant to think that Matt is funny for being so unself-aware. Like, it's like he's noticing women who are sexy and then being like, well, not for me, obviously. I'm just noticing so that I can give her to Tom.
Yeah.
Which, A, gross, and B, we're just supposed to be like, oh, that Matt, he's so...
What a rascal.
Yeah, what a rascal. He just is lying to himself about blah, 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 blah. And it's like, there's nothing really funny about this. It's not... The idea of giving women to your friends isn't funny. The idea that Matt can't continue to find women attractive after he's married is ridiculous.
Yeah.
The idea that that's something you can or should turn off.
Yeah.
Once you're in a committed relationship.
Yeah, or, like, at all. Like, you can't help what your brain notices.
Yeah, and also just the way Matt notices these women and interacts with them is much more egregious than it has been in the past. Like, we're not saying that Matt has never in the past been like, ooh, there's a sexy lady.
Sure.
We had that, like, long scene a while ago where Matt and Brigitte were, like, pointing out hot people to each other. Or hot people in Matt's case and ugly-ass dudes in Brigitte's case. But, like, there's always been an element of it being, like, sort of charming. Yeah. Matt hasn't necessarily framed his attraction to various women in gross ways before. But, yeah, kind of we've transitioned from him having, like, a pretty healthy... straight sexuality to him just, like, being laden with, like, weird monogamous shame, having, like, a complex about it, Yeah, and now he's also talking about women as commodities that he can hand out to his friends.
Yeah.
And yes, we know that he is not being literal and it is meant to be a joke, but
But, still.
it's gross.
It's also just, way more objectifying. Matt has definitely, noticed in the past if a woman has nice tits, you know? And that's fine. So have I.
Yeah.
It's...
What are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do? But it's just, a lot more objectified and, gross in the way that Brandon Sanderson writes it. Brandon Sanderson, in my limited experience with him, is not an author who excels at writing human sexuality, which is fine. Not everyone has to be, but he's really trying hard here to do something that he's not excelling at.
It doesn't come super naturally to him, it seems, which, again, is fine. Some people emphasize in their writing,
Many other things.
yeah, besides just, sexuality, finding people attractive, blah, 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 blah. It's not something that you even really notice when it's gone, necessarily.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that is obviously a big facet of Robert Jordan's work, with characters constantly noticing if someone... Oh my god, remember when Perrin was like, I suppose some women would find Galad handsome?
Not all women. Not Fail, definitely
and
not
I was
Fail.
like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. Someone not Brigitte who would think he's way too hot.
Yeah.
Not nearly
There's
ugly
one
enough.
woman in the world who would not find
Yeah.
Galad attractive, I guess. I mean, women with taste who would be like,
That's a cop.
that's a cop.
That's a
wouldn't
member of the
find him
KKK.
attractive, but for the love. We get it. Perrin's straight. Anyway, yeah. So Brandon is trying to adapt to Robert Jordan's writing style and conventions, and it just doesn't come naturally. He's not very good at it. So yeah, now being in Matt's point of view feels sleazy when it hasn't in the past.
That's a good word for it.
I'm like, this man needs to be on a sex offender list,
Yeah.
and I don't even believe in having a sex offender list.
He's gross.
Yeah.
He is grossing me out. It's also the final thing that I will say is that I know the whole thing here we're playing with is Matt's curiosity with the letter.
Yeah.
Is Matt's curiosity and Matt's trickster persona and his little magpie tendencies to investigate and have things. But I was thinking, how many times do I just put a letter on my desk that's a bill or something that I'm oh, I need to look at that, and then I will legitimately forget about it for 3 weeks?
Yeah.
So if
completely forget.
If Varen gave me this task, I would end up putting the letters down somewhere and just
be like, oh shit, where'd that thing
yeah,
go?
a month would pass and I'd be like, oh my god, right.
Am I allowed to leave yet?
Yeah. That would be me, because I am not a very productive person.
So yeah, just annoying, generally, the chapters we've read. Not great. The next section is going to be Elaine, and then we're going to get, I think, Min's point of view, primarily. It might switch, but I think it's mostly Min. Well, it's going to be an outsider point of view, for new and enlightened Rand returning to
New
tier.
and weirder Rand.
So yeah, we get to see Instagram influencer girly Rand roll back up.
Hi, baby.
Hiya!
That'll be interesting.
Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. For the low price of $999, you can come to my wellness retreat in Sedona, Arizona.
What?
Apparently there are a lot of psychic wellness retreats held in Sedona, Arizona.
Sedona. For $999, you can come to my Saving the World from the Dark One in Sedona, Arizona.
I was just listening to my Cole podcast that I'm going to be referencing all season, sorry, about a lady who got scammed, mega scammed by this psychic, and she was she's really funny about it. She's like, I know, everybody I know. And she's like, I went to a retreat in Sedona, and both the hosts are like, why is it always Sedona? Why is it always Sedona, Arizona?
What's the Wheel of Time equivalent of Sedona, Arizona, I wonder?
I don't know. Somewhere in the no man's land, or Saltia.
Fucking Hinderstap. I don't
Yeah.
know. It's the only town name I know. Okay, everyone, that's it.
That's it. Shall we rate how we're feeling?
Yeah, let's do it to it.
Beep, 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 beep. Sorry, you can hear these markers clattering around.
I mean, it's better than just the constant hammering.
Okay.
Jackhammer.
At
Is there an annoyed option?
There is not, but I could do like a light red, which is mad. So we've got happy, sad, dead inside, mad, confused, or feeling like quitting the podcast. But I've got a whole bag of markers over here. We could add annoyed onto the list.
How are you feeling?
I mostly feel dead inside this episode.
Well, let's do a yellow-red combo.
Okay.
Orange. Except they're markers, so they don't.
It won't really
Mix
blend,
like
but
that.
that's okay. What should we do?
Thanks, everyone, for listening to... Thank you
For coming to our wellness retreat in Sedona, Arizona.
Thank you for coming to our wellness retreat in Sedona, Arizona. I've been Emily Jusha, and this has been Sally Goodshire. And that's Ed. Okay, thanks to Glenn McKenzie for the theme song. Does my breathy influencer
I really
voice
like it, yeah.
inspire everyone? Do you find it sexual? I'm really tired, you guys. Thank you, Glenn McKenzie, for our theme song. Thanks to our patrons on Patreon and our followers on social media. You all are the best. Do you have a sign-off?
Yeah, I've already told you this. I'm sorry. My... growing up, there was a family across the street from us, the Russells, who we love, friends of the podcast celebrity, Cole
Friends of the
Russell.
podcast, yeah.
And their dad is just one of those, like, very dad guys. Like, he's just always, like, keeping tools around that feels like he's gonna use, or, like, food that's well past expired, but he's convinced is still good and stuff like that.
I think he's featured in your sign-offs before.
Oh, yeah.
When
Probably.
he was watching some weird
Oh, yeah, when he was watching
documentary.
PBS.
Yeah.
So this is my, like, kind of strange but lovely, very kind, charming uncle, Mark. And a while ago, we ended up with a saw that Emily needed for, like, one project, but we never used again.
It was like $7 at
Yeah.
Home Depot.
Yes. No, please note the price. And we gave it to Mark's daughter, Alicia, who our friend...
No, I had to give it to Cole.
Oh, you gave it to Cole.
Yeah, it was a whole thing. I didn't want the saw anymore. We were moving, and it was just like, I'd packed everything except for the fucking saw.
Right. That's right. You gave it to Cole, his son, and to give to Mark. And we're like, see if your dad wants this. Mm-hmm. Well, I saw him today. He was on a ladder cleaning out my mom's gutters. Just, like, randomly, he'd walked over to do this. And I was, like, walking away, and he was like, hey! And I was like, hey! And he's like, tell Emily that I love that saw that she gave me. He said a specific saw name. I have no idea what it is. He's like, it's the best type of that saw that I've ever had. And I was like, that saw was probably like $3. And he's like, it's such a good saw. I've used it like 3 times. And I was like,
I'm so happy that
yeah.
he loves it. And I'm so happy that it went to the right home. You know?
Yeah.
I truly had no idea what to do with this saw. But then I saw Alicia and was like, you know who would love this saw? Your dad.
Mark would, and he does. He was like, it's such a good saw. And I was like, again, it was $7.
I was mostly doing it as a bit, giving it to him, but...
No, he's using it, baby.
I'm glad I maintained the favorite in-law status.
That's true. Yeah. Everyone's obsessed with Emily. How could you not be? Look at her. Don't make that noise. You are a menace.
Goodbye, everyone. We're going to Sedona.